Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for...
Okay. Good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. A copy of the Open Meetings Act is located on the north wall of the legislative chambers. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll begin today with the agenda for the Douglas County Health Center Board of Trustees, and I'll turn that over to Trustee Duda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me start by saying the county board doesn't meet for 2 weeks, the next 2 weeks here. I'm hoping to cut down on these trustee meetings to not being an every week thing. Once we get a little more into the works here, I'm hoping to go to every other week and eventually perhaps monthly or whatever the board feels is appropriate for the updates. Having said that, this is our update, and we will hear from, I hope, both Jim Turville and John Sheehan, whatever they may have to share with us this morning. So, good morning, Jim.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Jim Turville, Administrator of Douglas County Health Center. Before I start, I just wanted to share with you, we didn't have any damage except for one tree that was out in the circle out in front of the health center at 42nd Woolworth, and went through the field club area yesterday, and there's a lot of trees down over there. So we fared very well. We thought possibly the building had been hit by lightning. It was not, and we were on emergency power, or the emergency power did start up, but we didn't switch to it just because we had not lost electricity. But it could have been much worse, so that was quite a clap of thunder we had.
Yes.
If you refer to the document I laid at your desk this morning, and on the last page is what I'll be covering. That's the most recent information. On the 21st, we had a discussion, that was last Friday, with Jim Chiesa. He's our Chief Engineer for Public Properties, and he's in charge of all the systems at the Health Center, and Jeff McGill. And we're still on schedule for the Via Bell opening the first week in August. And the area is looking real good, thanks to Jeff's our Public Properties carpenters, painters, and engineers. They've done a great job up there. And the housekeeping employees for the Health Center will be cleaning it the last 2 weeks in July and getting it ready to be opened in August. The second bullet item there is last week Commissioner Boyle had asked for a tour to be set up for the commissioners, and we've got that set up, and Jeff McGill is suggesting probably August 5th or the 12th, and I'll let you know whichever one works best for you or for us, and then if you can see if it'll fit your schedule. The plans for buffet-style dining, we have a set of plans that are 95% complete. And we're going to be meeting on that this week, probably tomorrow, to get those plans resolved so we can start moving forward. And hopefully the buffet-style dining could be open when Via Bell opens the first week in August. Let's see. The last item there is electronic health record. We had a meeting yesterday, again with Diane Wallace and Phil Alley from .com, and we're continuing to move along with that and preparing that RFP. We're including everything in it, more detail probably than necessary, but we want to make sure we have everything in there that we need versus not having enough and then wishing we had it in there. So erring on the side of it and making it a very complete RFP. So that's the information I have for you today. If there's any questions, I'll be very glad to try and answer them for you.
Trustee Kraft.
Yes, very minor, but we don't need to see the 2 pages that
Okay.
we already had. Save some paper.
Will do.
The other thing is I've always encouraged people to use both sides of the page.
I told them to do that this morning, but due to the humidity, our copy machine would jam, so we weren't able to do that. So I apologize.
I can understand. I jammed.
And
Due to the humidity, I jammed also. So.
And I was trying to get down here for your meeting, and I didn't want to be late, so that's why I said just make it so I can go.
Thank you. But yeah, I don't think we need to have the
very fine
previous discussion. Just start with continued from so and so.
Will do.
Okay. Thank you.
Good point. Thank you.
Well, if you could email that, though, because I do
Sure.
like following
I
it.
do, too.
And so...
My pleasure to do so.
I would appreciate
Okay.
that.
Good.
Thank you. Trustee Morgan.
I did walk through last week and
Good.
took a look at what they were doing just on the 3rd there. And seems to be moving along well. Like
It is
you said.
looking real good. The painters of the rooms just about all painted.
Yep.
The nurses station took out the old high nurses station from back in the 60s and putting in a new one that's going to be like the one over at CC1, which is Windsong Way and Eden Way and Tranquility. It's going to be very, very nice. And the carpenters are doing all of that work. So,
I also want to just say that, visiting that facility, I really have a tremendous respect for the people that are the caregivers. I mean, as you ride up on the elevator, you walk around, the work that they do with the people, their patience in trying to help the people, I just can't tell you how much I respect that.
thank you. I appreciate that. We're very blessed in many ways. We've got an excellent staff. We wouldn't have the 5-star rating if we did not have a great staff working at the health center. So we're very fortunate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments for Jim this morning?
Good morning.
Well, then thank you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you very much.
We'll come out and take a look at it here in a
Very
few
shortly.
weeks. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks. Did you have any updates you wished that you could be sharing with us this morning, John? The Community Mental Health Center Director, John Sheehan. Good morning, John.
And I'm John Sheehan, Director of the Community Mental Health Center. Just wanted to tell you we're continuing our efforts to increase our census in the day treatment program. Our census increased in the month of May over April from 5 to 7 average daily patient load. So as I reported to you several weeks ago, we think our max capacity is 10, and we will continue our efforts to increase our census so that we get to 10 per day. Our efforts may be hampered a little bit over the next few months because we have 4 psychiatrists on our staff. One of them is out on a medical issue, and she's out indefinitely. Another reported to us last week that she's resigning, so in the middle of August. So we'll be down to 2 psychiatrists in August. We are doing the best we can to hire another psychiatrist to replace Dr. Shepard, who resigned. But if we don't get her or get a replacement for her over the next month or two, there may be some impact on our day treatment program as well. So,
Thank you. And we certainly had extensive discussion on that yesterday at the trustee meeting. Any comments, Trustee Kraft?
Yes, and for the public to know, one of the options we have is closing the outpatient clinic, correct?
well, that would probably be the last option.
Right,
to be
but that
closing the
is
clinic.
one of the things. The other is decreasing the
Inpatient bed capacity.
inpatient bed count from 16 to 8.
Yes.
And just so the public knows the impact of not having adequately staffed. And the repercussions are vast throughout the community. So good luck on getting someone at the pay we offer, and that's going to be difficult.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments?
I
Trustee
would-
Borgeson.
John, I would appreciate if you would take a look at how Jim is timelining out their actions in keeping track, and do the same for the Community Mental Health Center, so we have a period like they have to
Okay.
keep us on line of what's going on with your recommendation side.
Okay.
Thanks.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you both for the updates. Unless there's anything further for the good of the cause, I would entertain a motion to adjourn as the Board of Trustees.
Executive session.
Oh, I sure hope not. I'm not aware of any exec session. There is a citizens' comments portion here. If anybody wanted to say anything to the Board of Trustees, this would be the opportunity. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion passes.
Thank you all.
We'll move to the agenda for the Douglas County Board of Equalization. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Boyle, Commissioner Duda, Commissioner
Here.
Kraft, Commissioner
Here.
Morgan, Commissioner Rogers, Commissioner Tusha.
Here.
Madam Chair.
Here. Item A, approval of the minutes of the Board of Equalization meeting held Tuesday, June 18, 2013, and call for a meeting and set Tuesday, July 16, 2013 as the date for hearing on certified assessment corrections reflecting the addition of omitted property to the tax rolls or increased value on property.
Motion approved, A and B.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Please vote.
Motion passes.
Citizens' comments. Is there anyone in the chamber wishing to speak to the Board of Equalization about an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move to the resolutions. There are 4 resolutions.
Motion approved and adjourn.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Please vote.
Motion passes.
We'll move into the agenda for the Douglas County Board of Commissioners. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Boyle, Commissioner Duda, Commissioner Kraft, Commissioner Morgan, Commissioner Rogers, Commissioner Tusha.
Here.
Madam Chair.
Here, item A, approval of the minutes of the Board of Commissioners meeting held Tuesday, June 18, 2013. Item B, approval of claims submitted for payment processed through Tuesday, July 9, 2013. And item C, 2 exceptions for approval as well.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Please vote.
Commissioner Morgan. Motion passes.
Consent agenda, 8 items A through T for a total of 20 items. Is there any that commissioners would like pulled? Oh,
Motion approved.
is there a second to approve consent agenda?
Second.
Any questions or comments?
I'd like to make a comment on item E. We're naming the First National Bank, U.S. Bank, and Mutual of Omaha Bank as our depositories. Those are the folks we want to talk to about giving us that special treatment on
right.
giving money for the Greyhound bus depot, just to give you added direction.
That's right. Any other questions or comments on the consent agenda? Please vote.
Motion passes.
We'll move to recognition and proclamations. There is a proclamation commemorating the 100th anniversary of the Old Lincoln Highway and reaffirming Douglas County's commitment to preserve and protect the 3-mile segment of the Lincoln Highway.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Where is? Oh, there he is.
Still on the agenda.
That's under presentation. I'm going to break here for a minute, though, and let Dan do the presentation before we vote on this.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Dan.
Thank you, Commissioners. Dan Kudlik, County Engineer's Office. I'm here on a pleasant task for a change and trying to get the word out to as many people as possible in the public in regard to a 100-year centennial celebration that is scheduled for this Saturday, 1 o'clock, out on the Old Lincoln Highway. It'll be taking place between 180th and 192nd, actually on the Old Lincoln Highway. And the State of Nebraska Historical Society will be unveiling the 500th informational marker to be placed in the state across various scenic byways. So it's quite a honor for us to have the Old Lincoln Highway declared as a National Historic Road, of course, and this will be quite an exciting ceremony. What I'd like to do with your approval, Commissioners, is have about a 3-minute quick slide presentation that will kind of walk us down the Old Lincoln Highway. I'm hoping this will be broadcast out on Cox Channel so that people who are unable to attend the ceremony or even get out to this road will have an opportunity to see what this facility looks like. It is obviously very unique in the country and very, very important in the historical context of transportation in our country. So with a click of the button here, I'll move on. That is the route, by the way. That's about 3,380 miles. It followed the Interstate 80 alignment that we are using today. This was America's first all-weather coast-to-coast highway. It went between New York and San Francisco and ran through about 13 states. The Lincoln Highway was the first proposed by the American Automobile Association in 1902. They felt that a transcontinental road would be of
value to our country, and obviously they were quite right. A gentleman by the name of Carl Fisher, who was the president of Presto Light Company, which were the headlights that were used back in the turn of the century, was a kind of a entrepreneur and a visionary person, and he was the person who literally took it upon himself to push this concept through. He was able to convince the president of Goodyear Rubber and Packard Automobile to contribute some money towards the establishment of an all-weather road. And when they talked about an all-weather road back at that time in our history, it was basically a rock road was in their idea of being possible. They were hoping to raise about $10 million to purchase the rock and spread it around to all the various cities and counties in order to get an all-weather type route across the country. They found out pretty quickly that that wasn't going to happen because of costs. Also, Henry Ford had indicated publicly he would not contribute a penny to this type of transportation. He felt that the taxpayer should pay for a public road, not private individual companies. So that put a little glitch in the plan. What the fellas did is they decided to sell shares to the public, which they did for $5, and they generated some additional revenue to fund this project. It sputtered along for a number of years. Eventually, the road was open, but a lot of it was still dirt and pasture land. Pressure was brought upon various communities to get the road either rocked or paved. So in about 1920, Douglas County had a section of road still unpaved that ran west of the city limits of Omaha, basically, to the Fremont area. And they had what they called seedling miles, which at that time were new concepts in paving of roads. And of course, bricks were present in cities, and so they felt that paving with brick, I suppose at that time, made some sense. So they actually came up with some money. Some of it was federal money. The Federal Highway Administrator back in about 1918 started to fund highways, and so the county board had to come up with some local match like we do today, and they did, and they paved the road that we are looking at today in 1920. This is a sneak preview that you're looking at now of the unveiling. It is covered now, so we thought we would show it for the people who are not going to be able to drive out there on Saturday. But it is a significant structure, of course, and quite proud of it. Quite interestingly, we had the Troop 407 of the Boy Scouts help us install those two concrete markers that you see on either side of the historic monument. They were historically involved in 1928, the Boy Scouts, and they installed 3,000 of those markers across the entire country, which was a method of keeping people on track across the old Lincoln Highway. You know, they painted the poles red, white, and blue. There was another Eagle Scout project last year where one of the scouts painted some poles, a number of poles, I'm told, through the Elkhorn area. So he also has contributed vastly to this project, and we appreciate that. But anyway, next Saturday, and I'd like to also show you here quickly, if I can, a vintage vehicle that we have, to my knowledge, about 4 1913 vintage vehicles that will be on display at this ceremony. This is one of them who the vehicle happens to be in the Schursburg family, which coincidentally is an employee of our office. So they were kind enough to trailer this vehicle in from out of town, and it actually runs. I had a ride in it last Friday around our parking lot, and it was quite a thrill for me. I enjoyed it very much. But anyway, those are the type of vehicles that will be on display, which is quite a unique affair in its own right. So again, June 29th, 1 p.m. Saturday, out at the Old Lincoln Highway between 192nd and 180th Streets. There will be signs and employees directing traffic to this facility and ceremony, and we hope the public shows up and takes it all in, because it is quite a significant event in the history of our transportation system. So thank you. That is my presentation, and
Good.
hope to see you all there.
Thank you, Dan. Commissioner Boyle?
Say, Dan, you didn't mention the story about Blair stealing our highway.
Well, that is true. I've tried to keep it short.
Tell everybody about that.
Well, there are a lot of stories like that if you dig into the history of the old Lincoln Highway. The very classic one to me, though, was in 1913, they held a governor's conference in the city of Denver to announce the secret alignment of the old Lincoln Highway. It was kept secret deliberately because, of the
competition.
Competition. Well, they announced it in the city of Denver, and lo and behold, the Lincoln Highway skipped the whole state of Colorado and went up into Wyoming. And I understand the governor wasn't real happy about that. He assumed it would be going through Denver. So, literally, this guy was lucky to get out of town alive, but they offered to build a detour of sorts, like a spur of the old Lincoln Highway down to Denver, which was probably, in hindsight, a mistake because that opened up a whole Pandora's box of other cities wanting that same favor. So, Blair's situation came about later in history, but it was done supposedly to cut off some of the length of the old Lincoln Highway traveling across country. But Omaha, of course, and Douglas County were quite upset about that.
Well, I thought they took the whole highway, though. They moved the markers and did the whole deal.
They came in the evening and took the markers off the old Lincoln Highway in Douglas County through that stretch by Elkhorn and transplanted them up near Blair.
Those folks up in Washington County, I'll tell you, those folks up there,
I know.
can't trust them.
We never want to forget that. But anyway, thank you very much for
Thanks,
your
Dan.
time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan.
What time is it again, Saturday?
1 o'clock, 1 p.m. Saturday. The weather forecast is beautiful day, so we're lucky. Hopefully
And where's it going to be, in Elkhorn?
It'll be on the old Lincoln Highway.
Okay.
Between 192nd and 180th Street. The easiest way to get there is the Dodge Expressway. Get off at the interchanges of 180th or 192nd. Head north about a mile, and there'll be signs and people directing you to that facility.
And there's gas stations on the way out?
I think there's a couple out there, Commissioner.
Thanks.
Commissioner Kraft?
Yes. I've been talking with Nils Erickson. Do you know Nils or not?
I do not.
Okay, Nils owns the old mill, which was at about Saddle Creek in Dodge.
Yes, I know
okay.
what you're talking about. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
And he's trying to make sure that bridge there gets preserved because that was part of the original Lincoln Highway.
Sure.
And there are a lot of people who are trying to listen with a deaf ear and claim it's not part of the original Lincoln Highway, although Nils has shown me proof from old articles and other things.
Sure.
So, our history is important to us.
I don't disagree with that.
Thank you.
Good for him. Thank you.
Commissioner Duda?
Reading in the World Herald last weekend, I thought that was a great story that they ran on the Lincoln Highway, the history of it, and I appreciate your tying some of this in with that. One of the things I found most fascinating when you talk about these signposts, that there were no road maps. I mean, the story they had of somebody taking a 6-week cross-country trip on the Lincoln Highway, but getting lost was just part of which I still do. But I mean, in the days before, you didn't know if you had gas stations, hotels, any kind of services, where you were going, or even a road map to tell you where these convoluted roads went to. So it's been a fascinating bit of history, and thank you for sharing this with us, Dan.
It is fascinating. There are a lot of books out on the website to read up on this, and libraries. The Library of Elkhorn has a number of great books to read, actually, about the history.
And you didn't mention that it was Max Fisher, the gentleman that he also founded the Indianapolis 500.
Carl Fisher.
Carl Fisher, thank you.
Yeah, he was quite a character, apparently.
Thanks.
Commissioner Tusha?
Hey, Dan, on those bricks, how far do they go on the old stone bricks like that? Do they go on the whole road or just sections of it?
Well, there are sections that have been improved. As an example, 192nd and Old Lincoln Highway, back in the 80s, we had a project to relocate that intersection because of safety, and the bricks were not replaced at that time. So that's part of the history, though, as far as the historians are concerned. Other than that, though, it's pretty much intact all the way from 174th Street to 204th Street, about 3 miles. and then actually heading west through Elkhorn, and you go out on their back way out to Maple Street. That's an asphalt road, but there's bricks underneath that road.
So if there's repairs to be done, will the bricks be replaced, or are they going to resurface it? Because I just think the bricks just add history and classic to the road.
Well, that project I just mentioned to you, we saved every brick that came off of that project. It was 350,000 bricks or something of that nature, and they're still stockpiled in our yard. We also bought some bricks a number of years ago off of Dodge Street when they were building the expressway. So we have an abundant supply of bricks for maintenance for many, many decades.
Or, if you ever need extra funding, people would probably love to buy one of those bricks. Just to, seriously,
people love them so much they take them on occasion.
Do they?
For garage sale prices. So.
Well, I thought I'd offer, but apparently not.
But anyway.
Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Hope to see you Saturday. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
And with that, we'll go back up to the proclamation, and there was a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion passes.
Citizen comments. Is there anyone in the chamber wishing to speak to the Board of Commissioners about an item not on the agenda? Morning, Laura.
Hi, Madam Chair. Okay, I have some questions related to the budget, and I feel as though they may be timely. This handout that I have here, it's 336 Beverly. It lists the expenditures for juvenile court. And I sent Don Klein an email requesting clarification about the last employee listed there. Her name is Amy Schuschman. I don't know her. She makes $32.36 an hour. She's a part-time employee. That's 64 hours of pay period. She makes $53,874, which if you compare that to the full-time employees, I'm not certain I understand that. And I guess I'm also uncertain I understand how it can be that the county attorney just feels as though he doesn't need to respond to a citizen's request for information. I've also highlighted all the individuals in this department that work on the truancy initiative. And if you add that up, that total is $258,327, and that's just the salary, not the benefits. And what I find interesting about that is if I look at the fiscal note for LB 800, I'm just going to read it. It says, Douglas County estimates that civil citations will increase the number of referrals to the Juvenile Assessment Center. They estimate 400 youth per year could receive a civil citation. They estimate that we will need 2 additional juvenile specialists, which will cost $27,976, so about $60,000 plus benefits. As you know, Madam Chair, I have come and personally sought your advice as to how many truancy referrals we are seeing, because I do go and observe in juvenile court. I witness diversion where 6-year-old children are forced to attend with their parents and explain why it is that their child was ill and missed school because they had earaches or asthma, or maybe they have some complication or anxiety disorder. And I'm not on the page that I think that this is the job of government or the county attorney or any of the attorneys that work in that office. So I'm really struggling to understand, since we have millions in shortfalls, why are we paying for things like this? What benefit have we gotten for these expenditures? That's my question. And then my third question is, the $55,000 that was discussed for the library, the law library, how do we get that number? Because that number has very little correlation to the actual cost. And this information is readily available. Payroll alone is about $120,000, not including benefits. The subscription packages for the various software, all of which it's redundant. You can utilize even more software at Creighton Law Library, at UNO Law Library, which is open every single day of the week until 9 p.m., and they open at 7 a.m. Those are my questions.
Okay, thank you. And I do believe we get reimbursed from the learning community for the expenses of that the new law was put upon the county. And I think we've gotten that for the last 2 years, I believe. So we do get reimbursed from that. And then the law library, Laura, I'll have to get back to you on that because I believe that 55 is the portion of Douglas County, but I'll double check on that. Commissioner Boyle, did you have?
That was my response.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
All right.
And could I?
Commissioner Kraft?
Yeah, I thought I'd hit it. But and using the Creighton Law Library, they have very strict requirements. They sent us all an email on it saying that would not be practical for us to substitute that for the law library we have. And they were very adamant that it was for their students first. During finals, the library is closed to anyone who is not a student or an instructor. During the summer, the library has shorter hours, as I recall. I can't recall everything in the letter. It was quite adamant that it was not a public library. Your period is over. You sit down. I don't need a response. So your period is over. You had your 3 minutes.
I just had additional information, though, that I wanted to give.
Well, give it to me later. You had your 3 minutes.
Yes, you can give it, Laura.
Okay. Well,
Mark, you're not running the meeting.
Okay, the information that I think would be helpful to you is I actually have a copy of everyone who's visited the law library, and it's less than 1,000 people in the past 3 years. And I'm happy, this is it. This is a list of everyone that checked in.
Okay.
If you calculate how much it costs per citizen, it's very expensive.
Okay, thank you, Laura.
You would go, Mr. Kavanaugh.
We'll move to the public hearing.
Maybe Tom could forward that to us after in an email, if you don't mind, or Ellen could.
I will.
So we can at least see it.
Thank you, Commissioner Morgan. Public hearing, item A, there's a Class CK license for beer, wine, and distilled spirits on and off sale and catering for 7M Grill at 15805 West Maple Road, Suite 101 and 102, Omaha 68116. Manager application George E. Jacobs, 9541 Brentwood Drive, La Vista. This is the public hearing. Is there anyone wishing to speak for or against this liquor license? Seeing none. Are you here for the liquor license?
Yeah.
Okay. Could you want to just state your name and address and who you're representing?
Good afternoon, or good morning, rather. My name is George Jacobs. I'm the current owner.
Oh, okay.
And so I just thought I'd stop here if there were any questions any of you had to ask me.
Okay. Thanks for being here. Anyone else wishing to speak during this public hearing? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. There is action that can be taken.
Motion approved.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion passes.
And I will give a little plug in. I love your gluten-free menu you have out there, so keep adding to it.
Conflict of interest, I think. I saw this.
I give all my gluten to Commissioner Boyle.
That's good.
We'll move to the committees, the first one being the Finance, Commissioner
Good one.
Morgan and Commissioner Duda.
Well, I think as presented, but the one thing I did have is the resolution, if that's okay to take up at this point. This is to reinstate, and I'd make a motion to reinstate $60,000 at the $100,000 reduction that we made after meeting with some of the staff and others and the university about the 40 employees, et cetera. I think this is the right thing to do, so I'd make that motion.
We need a motion to reconsider first.
Or reconsider.
I'll second that.
Okay. Commissioner Boyle, on the reconsideration.
Well, I'm not going to be supporting the reconsideration. I've gone back and forth on this. I thought, I probably should try to compromise on it, but the more I thought about it, I won't support the change. So I'll be voting against the reconsideration.
Okay. No other lights. This is a motion and a second for reconsideration of this agenda item. Please vote.
So if you're in favor, you vote no?
No,
You vote yes.
Oh, pardon me.
going to say, wait
That was
a
the,
minute.
it was the gluten affecting me.
Motion passes.
So now you want to make your
Now,
motion.
at this time, I'd like to make the motion to reinstate the $60,000 from the $100,000 reduction. Therefore, they would have a $40,000 reduction in their budget for this year.
And I will second that.
Commissioner Boyle?
Well, I've received some emails, and I do have to some who've sent to the county address. I discovered this morning I received a phone call from someone who was trying to reach me, and my county email is automatically forwarded to a Cox address, and I discovered that many of them were not open, and so I apologize. I'll open those. I did respond to those who wrote to my law office, and but I will get back to everybody who wrote to me and try to explain my position. But when you think about this, and I was trying to rationalize, first of all, voting to permit the additional money that Commissioner Morgan has proposed, and I thought, well, I probably ought to get off my high horse. I've been pushing this for 7 or 8 years now, and let the funding go through. And then I thought, to me, it's really a principle. I respect the work that Extension does. I respect the work that the Boy Scouts do, the Girl Scouts. I respect the work that a lot of organizations do. Nonprofits, religious organizations, all sorts of groups. I appreciate the contributions that are made. In beautifying the city, I think there's a lot of work yet to be done. But I don't think taxpayers should be footing the bill for all of these things. And particularly as we head into more and more difficult times and choices being made with whether or not we should close clinics for the mentally ill, and whether or not we should cut funding for medications, and whether or not we should reduce spending as we had proposed in our budget for the mentally ill and treatment of children who are mentally disabled and adults. That just doesn't make sense for me. That's the entire budget package. So I decided to really think this out, and for me it came pretty quickly because if you want to go to one of the state parks, you have to buy a stamp, and we're all taxpayers. I suggested that it become user pay, and someone wrote back to me and said that's really absurd, that you shouldn't be doing that. We already paid for it once. Well, we pay for the park system. We pay dearly for a beautiful park system. It's terrific, and there have been a lot of private donations that have made Nebraska parks a really terrific, beautiful operation, and particularly we're very fortunate in eastern Nebraska. We have some really terrific parks, and there are more coming. We're really lucky. But they're not free. When you pull up, you have to have a stamp, and it costs $25 a year to get in. So are you willing to pay that? If you're not, you don't get in. And if you want to go in on a daily basis, it's $5. So if you want to go to the Mahoney Park and have lunch, you have to pay $5 to get in, and then you go to pay lunch and pay for lunch. I don't think that's unreasonable. I've done that before. When I've gone to meetings, I've had to pay to get in. So I think that's part of the freight. It's part of our responsibility as citizens to pay our way. If you want to get a fishing permit, it's $28.50 if you're a resident. If you want a hunting license, it's $14 a year. If you want to shoot deer, it's $25 or $30 sometimes in other seasons. Turkey, $24. Elk, $159. Antelope, $35, and it goes on. All sorts of permits that cost money in addition to what you pay as a taxpayer. So I think it's logical to say to the 31,000 people who call and ask questions of Extension that you need to pay for the answers. It's not unreasonable to say that the service is there. Across the state, it's $54 million. But in a state our size, that's a pretty big chunk of money. And this is not to demean the product that comes out. The master gardeners do a terrific job. And some of you may not know this, some of you may. But I take a lot of heat from my large extended family because I have family members who use Extension who I think probably want to use a different surname when they get involved in extension. So I have a daughter-in-law who's very active, and she gives me a great deal of hell over my position. So a very friendly way, but she lets me know what she thinks, and I appreciate her position. And I think she appreciates mine. I know she does. But I hope you respect my position. I know it's difficult, but I do have to stand my ground on this. I think it's reasonable. So I will be voting no. There are other cuts yet to be made that I think need to be made in other areas, and I'm still going to push for some more of those. I'd like to avoid a property tax increase. I think of all the residents around this city who have difficulty making ends meet, and some of you are in this audience. And you have a property tax burden that comes from all of us governmental subdivisions that latch onto your property. And it starts with the school system. We are glad to pay taxes for a good educational system. We have the Learning Council now that's expensive. We have 13 school districts that touch Douglas County, and they take part of our taxes. So we have a heavy educational system that takes a big bite. Then everybody who licensed a car, I bought a new hybrid, and I paid over $3,000 to license it. That's a big chunk when you just get a license plate for your car. But it's expensive to live here, and we're going to be contributing to that expense with the property taxes. And if we don't start chipping away at the expenses, the money we're spending on your behalf, it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse, and we're going to chase you right out of your home.
Commissioner Duda.
Thank you. Politics is the art of compromise. Incidentally, I like your daughter-in-law and her stand, Commissioner Boyle. I would certainly be supportive of that. If I were designing the budget myself, there would be no cuts to extension. I think they are a good investment, good leverage between the state and federal funding and everything. We get a lot of bang for our buck there. Periodically, when these things come under review, we get reminded of the services that these organizations do provide, and the many emails and things that we have received lately have been very insightful into reminding us of all the great services that Extension does provide. If I may ask, how many people are here this morning in support of Extension and their funding? I'm not sure that we will be hearing from all these people. I'm not sure we need to, but I think it's important that we recognize and be aware of how much support there is in the community for Extension. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to, I believe there are a couple of commissioners here who are supporting a lesser cut than we started with, and I want to personally thank commissioners who are willing to bend a little bit and compromise. Politics is the art of compromise, and I appreciate those who are willing to listen to the public and to respond to them. Thank you.
I will just add my comments in regards to the emails that were received, and I did take note that I would say 99.9%, if not all, centered on two programs within Extension, the Master Gardeners and the 4-H. And so, and they were very pleading emails about not cutting those two programs. I even received a kind of a whipping from the Sarpy County Commissioner, who they're getting emails at Sarpy County about our cut as well to the Master Gardener program. So what I would say is that while cuts are painful, and I agree with some of what Commissioner Boyle said, I also agree with Commissioner Duda that there is an art of compromise in crafting a budget of this size. And so what I would hope, though, is that the administration doesn't touch those two programs, because from my understanding from the last meeting, especially 4-H being self-sustaining, that should not endure a cut. And so, and I too see the value. I was a 4-H leader back when my oldest bonus child was a student in elementary school. So I know what the 4-H program means. So while I still believe we can craft the budget and should craft the budget without a tax increase, this adjustment to the extension I will be supporting as well. But hope, again, that those two programs, which undoubtedly within the emails that I received were the two that really were most important to the citizens that contacted me anyway. Commissioner Tusha.
First of all, thank you for everyone for coming today. Second of all, I have received several emails and many phone calls. I have returned all my phone calls, but I haven't responded to all my emails, and I will still follow up even after today's meeting on that. I initially had voted for the $100,000 cut, and again, with the compromise, I am going to vote to give back $60,000. On that note, I am also looking, and the reason I did initially for the $100,000 is because I'm trying to look at a balanced budget without raising property taxes, and I still will firmly stand by that. I will not be voting to raise property taxes. So that was my initial reasoning for cutting the $100,000, but I have also had a change of mind, and I did second P.J. Morgan's motion on this, so I will be voting to give back the $60,000 and compromise, and hopefully we'll still be able to do it without a tax increase. So thank you, everyone.
At this time, there is a motion and a second, and if there is anyone in the audience who has something that hasn't been said about extension, I would invite you at this time to come forward. The 3-minute light system will be used for your comments, so please take note of that. Hi, Doug.
Good morning. Doug Kagan, representing Nebraska Taxpayers for Freedom. The county residents are facing a possible property tax hike. Granted, the extension service serves a useful but not absolutely necessary service. We, in our white paper, suggested eliminating this entire extension service, and we still stand by that. It's funded by property taxes. The county is facing a $2.5 to $3 million deficit, and terminating the extension service would save over $441,000. That's a big chunk to take out of that deficit to avoid a property tax hike. Some of the services offered by the Extension Office, like support for Sudanese immigrant families, should require the assistance of individual church denominations that help these people immigrate here. We don't think that's a service requiring funding by property taxpayers. There exist agencies that can help farmers set up acreages and care for their livestock. Gardening services, some of the other services, you can find that information on the internet or other private entities. So we stand by our initial request that you will not fund the extension service anymore, but that you do eliminate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak on the item?
Dina Van Sickle, Director Extension, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Thank you for your time and energy that you've put into this. I know it's probably more than what everybody expected. I also want to thank the supporters that we have that have been so good to us and work with us. And I think that's the essence of what we are, is the more we work together, the more synergy we can build and produce, and we can all come up with ideas better than anyone would have thought of on their own, and I think that's what this is all about. So I want to thank you for your initiation into this position, and I also look forward to working with each of you to find better ways that we can do things with less money but more bang for our buck. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Hi, my name's Betty Selby Sislo, and I've been a master gardener for over 20 years. And I just would like to let you know that we are actually very necessary in the one fact that we have helped many people understand the storm water waste problems, the toxic chemicals that are going into our streams and our water. Not only that, we have so many people that come in that have disease and insect and other critter problems that they have no idea how to take care of it, and a lot of them will use extreme measures, and we have saved, there's no way of knowing, many what could be potential problems with more chemicals once again. So I do feel that the extension, the master gardener, the other stormwater is very, very necessary to help save our state. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this? There is a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion passes.
Next, we'll move to Administrative Services. Commissioner Tusha, there are 3 items under your committee.
Yes, the first one is a presentation on the formation of County IT Advisory Group, and I have Diane Wallace is here that's going to speak on that. Thank you.
Morning, Diane. Good morning, Commissioners. A little help. We have it online here, so just a second. I'm all for it. There we go. There we go. Okay. Good morning. Diane Wallace, Douglas County's IT Coordinator. I want to give you just a very short presentation about a group we're forming. We're calling that group the Douglas County IT Advisory Group. This group is going to come together. It's basically a work group where we can come together and the various county leaders can discuss information technology topics. This group is in addition to some niche groups we have today. We're having these kinds of conversations today, but we're coming together for very specific reasons. This would be more of a global, holistic type of a group. We'd have regularly scheduled meetings that would be facilitated. I'll be scribing. We'll have agendas, meeting notes. We've identified some core group members, equally from elected and non-elected offices. In addition to that core group, though, it'll be open to any county leaders that want to attend if they have a particular interest in a particular topic. And occasionally we'll invite guests, either from .com or other outside vendors from the city, etc., to hear our thoughts or to help give us some information, answer questions. The goals and the benefits. This group, the biggest benefit is just increased communication. Specifically on technology. Today, again, we kind of pull people together as needed, but there's a lot of benefits if we come together and talk, share ideas, share our needs, try to find the right projects that benefit the most stakeholders and departments. The types of projects we want to do, we want to increase our efficiencies, we want to try to have cost reductions when we implement technology. So with more discussion, better feedback and input, we'll have better results. One of the biggest goals is, again, that maximizing the stakeholder benefit. So if we have a particular need, sometimes that need happens in different departments. One department may be going after a solution. If we get together and talk about it, we might find that one solution could actually benefit many people if we just talk about it. And then we need to have some assistance and some input, again, to help prioritize our projects. We have limited resources. We have limited .com staff. We want to make sure we're doing the most important beneficial projects, kind of do them in the right order, taking ideas like what is the benefit, what is the cost, and coming up with those right kind of prioritizations. So reporting back is appropriate. If we're having some discussions, maybe make some decisions, some of that information would go back to .com through myself or through our 3 oversight committee members. We'll look for opportunities to report back to the Administrative Services Committee, and sometime we'll be coming back if we need big decisions or just want to give you an update, coming back and reporting to the full board. This is a group that's forming. We've not yet had our first meeting. After presenting today, then we'll get that scheduled for mid-July.
Okay. Commissioner Boyle.
Yes, and the do you have any authority to make people cooperate?
We're hoping that a lot of this will be communication, and people will get on board if they see the benefits. When that's not the case, that's when we would try to bring things back if we needed more of help with an idea, we'd bring it back to the Administrative Services Committee or to the full board.
Isn't this a little late?
We've got a lot of ongoing projects that we're doing. There's projects kind of in motion that we'd like to share, enterprise types of things that we're putting in place. I think we can't change history. I think what history tells us is that it is needed and it's a good group to have, and we'll get lots of those benefits going forward.
Well, I wish you'd been around about 20 years ago, because I think it's all over. I think everybody's doing their own thing. They've got their own email systems. They've got their own software. They've got their own IT people. Their departments are pretty much, self-sustaining. They've got their own, what do they call them, islands of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think, I just hope you don't spend a lot of time talking to each other about stuff. I think it's done. It's over. I don't mean to be so negative, but I'm just being honest. To me, it's a lost cause. Is the city going to be involved, or are they off on their own?
They bring some of their folks together and talk.
I'm sorry?
The city brings some of their IT players together as a group already.
They do themselves?
Yeah, and so we'll be coming together so that we can talk, and then as invited guests, if we need to bring city in, share an idea, we certainly would do that. You're pointing out kind of the need and the challenge, and yes, maybe it won't be easy, but I think the more we can get together and talk, some of these other groups that exist for specific reasons, the criminal justice IT group, we're seeing some benefits that existed, it went away, we brought it back, and we've got a good turnout, and we're talking about these topics and sharing information. The Oracle board is another group that meets, comes together, talks about Oracle specifically. Okay. So it's an opportunity to talk about broad technology, not just specific topics.
I can't get my agenda back up on my iPad, so anyway, I'll have to have some teenager come up here and do this for me. But so anyway, I can't. I don't know. Is the city? You're going to be talking to them informally, but they're not on this board, right?
Right. This is for us to talk inside the county, to understand our needs, our priorities, share information.
All right, and thanks. Is when we talked about some time ago, when we talked about .com, and what I wanted to see happen was, frankly, instead of you and the city having someone like you, what I wanted was that any department or elected official to get something done with .com would have to go see the chair of the county board in county government and make a plea, say, I want this software. And then the chair of the county board would, in consultation with others, would make the decision and say yes or no, and control the spending and control everything, and then know what other departments were doing and other elected officials and do what you're trying to do now. And that didn't work. So I'm glad that you're going to be doing that, but again, I think the horses have already left.
Yeah. Well, the
track.
Purchasing process, that's a good example.
Pardon me?
The purchasing processes, that's a good example where maybe there is some kind of a process change we do want to make inside the county. One of the things that would be on the group's agenda would be talking about all the RFPs so that we have visibility. Typically, when we're spending larger dollars, we're probably doing an RFP to pick a vendor, to pick a software. Many of those things come back on the agenda today. But we'd like to talk about them early to make sure we're getting all the right requirements in there, picking the right vendors, and then giving it that kind of visibility.
One last question. How about the court system? Can you get them to talk to each other?
Well, we have that criminal justice IT committee that comes together, so we're trying to talk with them, but they would be included in this too.
Okay.
There's some movement. It's going to take some time to get some of these things to change that have historically been in place.
Well, I think one of the ways is through the budget. I mean, if this group can tell us what's happening, in various departments and they're not cooperating, then if you tell us, hopefully we'll have the nerve, unlike what we just did, we'll have the nerve to tell them either you do this or the budget isn't there, do what you want to do alone, but it's there if you want to do it together, if we have the nerve to do that. Okay?
Yes, thank you.
Good luck.
Commissioner Tusha?
Oh, Mikey, you're so funny.
Well, I don't know if it's funny or not, but,
I love you, though. I do.
Thank you. I love you, too. Let's go on a date.
Okay.
You tell your husband, I'll tell my wife.
Oh, I won't even tell him.
Okay.
Oh, I guess he knows now, doesn't he?
I guess so.
Hi, Diane.
Hi.
You know, you have a long road ahead of you, but I appreciate what you're doing. And I totally understand what Mike is saying, because there are a lot of departments and elected officials that have their own IT and have their own programs and stuff. So, but maybe some of these programs are old, and, you know, if you bring a new program, we can kind of incorporate with the old one, or, you know, update them and bring a couple of, you know, elected officials or department heads together to maybe use one program. But I do appreciate you offering for these to let us sit in, because I would very, very much like to sit in on the meetings. So I just want to say congratulations on this. You guys got a long road ahead, but I'm looking forward to it. And I, again, am looking forward to sitting in on the meetings on those.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Duda.
Thank you. As somebody that did not support the creation of .com, I agree with a lot of Commissioner Boyle's sentiments, although I'm guessing the sun wasn't shining in the Sunshine District this morning. In any event, you do have a lot of work cut out for you, but I believe that .com is getting better. I believe that it's getting more responsive.
I do too.
And doing more appropriate work. And I think your addition as the county rep to .com was a great move, and I think this is an important and good step that you are taking towards. It's right. I mean, Commissioner Boyle's right. This would have been great if you'd been here 10 years ago doing this. We'd be better off today. Let's learn from history and try to be better going down the road. I think this is a good step in a good direction, and I applaud your bringing it to the forefront.
Thank you. One of the benefits is the county will be a better customer of .com. The more we get together, know what's important, discuss items. So it'll be beneficial both to us and to .com.
Very good. Thanks.
You know, if you remember, it's probably been 10 years ago that Costas Torregas, when he was here, his report actually suggested that we put something together. And one thing we have to remember, while I also believe .com is moving along a lot better, a lot of that had to do with when the previous .com board looked at the interlocal, and we kept saying, why are we trying to fix something that's not working? And the whole new governance structure became apart, and we got a new CIO who has really moved mountains over there. And so I think we too are on a good path. But this kind of group was actually suggested by Dr. Torregas, because the city and the county, while we have things that we could work together on, there are parts of our governments that are very different, and our needs are very different. And so we struggled with how to prioritize that, and I think this will definitely help bringing people together. And I agree with Commissioner Boyle, though, if there is groups that are still kind of out there on their own and don't want to participate, we would like to hear from that to see if we can help build that gap or bridge to bring them around the table.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Commissioner Boyle?
Well, Diane, I want to make it real clear. I definitely support what you're doing. I don't want you to, just because I did a flashback to 20 years ago and what happened then. I want to make it real clear. I was very happy to see this on the agenda, happy to see what you're proposing, and support you completely.
Great.
And I know that you have the full support of this board. If you've got me, you've got them. And I'm real happy with the work that Derek's done over there. He's really, there's a lot of confidence in what's taking place. So I want you to know that. So you've got our support.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Boyle. Thank you,
Okay,
Diane.
thank you.
With that, you have two others. Do you want to do the next one?
Okay, I have two resolutions, and if no one has any problem on this, I'd like to take them together. The first one, well, they're both resolutions approving professional services agreement between Douglas County, and the first one is Richard Coder, the second one is Christopher Musto for appraisal services during FY 2013 and 2014. And if no one has any questions, I move for approval.
Second.
Any questions or comments?
Well,
Please, Commissioner Morgan.
I was going to ask, what's the estimate of the cost on these services?
I'm going to send this to Marcos.
Marcos San Martin, County Administration. Commissioner, to address that, both of these agreements, the Musto agreement has a spending allowance essentially for the Board of Equalization to spend up to $25,000 for the professional appraisal services from Chris Musto. The other one is up to $5,000 from Mr. Coder. And both of these, whatever is expended, is coming directly out of the Board of Equalization budget that Mr. Lorenz has reviewed.
Okay.
You want those? Please vote.
Motion passes.
I'm going to hop back up to finance for a minute because Commissioner Boyle had asked for a point of privilege on a budget item. So, Commissioner Boyle.
Thank you, Commissioner Borgerson. This morning, I was preparing to come to the office, and I saw an email that the county clerk, Tom Cavanaugh, had sent out, and I felt I wanted some transparency, some disclosure. It was and you know me on computers, I can't quite get to the email, but it asked for disclosure about our spending and particularly the expenditure on salaries of county employees, I believe, and how we come up with those figures. And I'd like to ask Mr. Cavanaugh at the outset to be sure that I have the question that he asked framed properly. And if it's not, to please correct me. And then if it is, we'll proceed to try to get that information for him. I think he's made definitely a good point. Mr. Cavanaugh? If you would, I'd appreciate it.
Madam Chair? Okay. Tom Cavanaugh, Douglas County Clerk Comptroller. The information that we sent out was essentially as a result of during the Finance Committee meetings and the County Board of Commissioners meetings, citizens' calls, repeated requests for more transparency and more information relative to the budget process. And one glaring example of the lack of backup documentation, unlike what you require from departments and elected officials, was on the item that you are in charge of, and that is salary adjustments for all salaries in Douglas County. Commissioner Boyle did ask me earlier for some additional information relative to, which I'll provide for you.
Thank you.
Employment levels in Douglas County and historic employment levels in Douglas County. What this shows, just what we have on hand, is what the current state is as of the first part of June. We will go back and do a historical review as well as to the level of employment. As you know, most operational costs consist of employment costs of staff and personnel for counties. And the point is that the citizens deserve an explanation other than an item in the budget book of going from $1.8 million to $2 million without any explanation as to what composes that 10% increase in salary adjustments.
Thank you.
Commissioner Boyle?
Yes, and I did speak to Marcos, as he's the person who handles our negotiations now that triggers these increases in wages for all of our employees. And so I did ask him if he could give us at least a summary, and I think probably what we should do to comply with the reasonable request of Mr. Cavanaugh to put something into writing so that we can include it in our budget documents, how it is that how we arrive at these conclusions. I don't think it's a mystery. I'm sorry, Commissioner Borgerson?
Well, I have asked Joe Lorenz, our Chief Financial Officer, to respond to this.
Okay, good.
I could let him do that.
Fine,
right
that'd be great.
Joe?
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to clarify a little bit how the salary adjustment account works. Mr. Cavanaugh is right, and last year there was $1.8 million in the budget, of which we used about $1.6 million this year. There was $186,000 that didn't get used. How this account works is that amount will automatically fall back to the general fund reserves. And that amount that we budget is for future salary and labor increases. And this year it's at $2 million, and I'll go into a little bit why, but it's really driven by the increase in the amount of contracts that we anticipate could be settled in the next fiscal year. The amount is based on contracts that we settle. And in terms of transparency, why we can't list who departments are getting what is because all these actions are going to be settled in the future. As of right now, the only definite thing that I know is on July 5th, the settlement for FOP2, that union, will take effect in the payroll, and it will cost, out of this $2 million fund, about $147,000 will be used for that settlement. And that settlement includes a 6-month retro payment that goes back to December 31st, 2012, and then along with the salary increase for the rest of the year. If I look at this, I have contracts that expired on 12/31/2012 from Local 571, the IBEW supervisors, the youth center teachers, and then Local 251. There's a big contract expiring on June 30th next week from FOP 8. And then there are contracts expiring on December 31st for EULA, Teamsters 554, the Health Department Employees Association, and FOP 52. And the issue is that other than FOP 2, which is settling on July 5th, and we know the amount for, all these other contracts have yet to have their final terms negotiated. So we don't know exactly what that amount is and how it's going to be spread. In addition to that, at the end of the fiscal year, we always take and look at the employee increases for non-union employees and for the county attorney's office, the public defender, the elected public officials and their deputies, the bailiffs, and none of those amounts have really been determined yet. So that's why we can't say, well, this amount is going here and this amount is going there. What we really try to do in taking an approach that I think is consistent with Commissioner Kraft when he talks about truth in budgeting is take this pool of about $2 million, which I would say is a conservative amount, and then put that there, and over the course of the year, as these specific amounts are agreed to, then, and these amounts are all agreed to by the commissioners in this public forum and are published, then we take those amounts and we will increase the budgets of the respective departments by the amounts called for these salary increases and labor agreements. So I really think that what we're doing here is transparent and truth in budgeting, but we're not blessed with the ability to foretell the future, so that's why we can't do the specific allocation. And so what the feeling is, because all these contracts are to be settled this year, that this $2 million pool is what we need to set aside to cover these future increases in labor costs for the next fiscal year for the county.
I think that was really useful, and I'm sure others may want to comment about this, but I would find that narrative useful in a document. I mean, if that were, if the point was that the cost for FOP2, when we reach that point, if that could be placed in the document that FOP2 was going to generate an expense of $148,000 and it was a retro and it was forward, and that we were left with 571 IBEW such and such and Douglas County Youth Center teachers and 251 and FOP8 and EULA and all the rest of them, and that pool was left and it was 1.8 something million, and that then secondly we had the non-union employees that we needed to budget. If that were in a narrative and placed with a dollar amount, I think that would come somewhat close to what Mr. Kavanaugh has questioned. And I'd be curious whether Mr. Kagan had this information or whether you think we've met. And it's dangerous to ask a question you don't know the answer, but I'd like you to step to the podium and ask you, did you have this information, or is this the first you're hearing of it? And I don't mean to put Joe on the spot. You've done a terrific job, but you're kind of the test. You're the
Okay.
You're the canary in the mine. If you didn't hear this.
We asked this, our taxpayer group asked this question a couple of years ago. I went through Commissioner Borgeson. She referred me to Mr. Lorenz. He provided us with all this information already.
Okay.
And we were satisfied with the response.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. I didn't know that, and I just ran the risk of asking the question. But we do want to be open and available, and sometimes, we don't quite reach that, and we need to be aware of it. So we want to try to do that. And Marcos, I think, unless you want to add something, I think Joe already covered the territory. Are you comfortable with that? Well, I appreciate that. Can we put this in writing somehow and insert this into our budget, the narrative?
I'd be glad to.
Would you do that? Okay, well, I'm satisfied. Mr. Kavanaugh, is there anything else that you think we need to be doing to correct this, and then particularly in the future?
Well, Commissioner Boyle, in response to your staff's thing, I agree with you, Commissioner, that these things should be provided at the time that your public hearings are taking place for your Finance Committee. But there's also of having an estimate of how you arrive at a $2 million figure. If it's a 1% increase for those future contracts, then it would be X amount. If it's going to be a 2% increase for those future contracts, it would be a Y amount. And those that are not collective bargaining units, this board knows what you can and cannot afford for next year, come December or January, when you give the non-bargaining unit employees, as you did this year, a 2% pay increase. You know what kind of impact that's going to have financially. It's something that is discernible, something that is definable, and something that the public has a right to understand what makes up that $2 million figure.
Yeah.
The impact of your non-bargaining unit and your bargaining unit employee raises for the clerk's office amounts to $39,000 over the next 12 months. That's definable. It's a 2% for the non-bargaining unit, a 3% for the bargaining unit. Those formulas to arrive at a $2 million expenditure by the citizens of Douglas County is something that can be put down in black and white and accountable for.
That's a good point. I think, I'll take a stab at answering that, and I'll let the experts who do this, but I think, and my response to that is that I think how we arrive at that number, how the professionals arrive at that number, is what we believe is the competition, what our comparables would be if we were to go out and look at what our comparable counties are paying, what they're doing, with how they're raising salaries, what are comparable, whether it's in Minnesota or wherever it is, we're comparing our counties, and then we try to treat the non-union employees in a fair way, so that we're compensating them in a fair way, so that they're receiving wages increases comparable to what the unions are. Now, I'll ask the people who do this whether that's even in the ballpark. Marcos?
Sure, I'm happy to comment. Marcos C. Martin, County Administration. Commissioner, I think, right, in general terms, you are correct. Chapter 48 of the Nebraska statutes that essentially guides us as far as labor, Commission of Industrial Relations, and so under Chapter 48 and the CIR, Commission of Industrial Relations guidance, Nebraska counties review wages and compensation of employees based on similar job descriptions and similar labor markets. And so essentially to further this, we go out and we find, we hire consultants that conduct wage surveys for our units, and we review those numbers. So yes, you are very, very correct. We look at similar positions, similar labor markets.
Thank you. And maybe we could include this too in this document somehow. I mean, just that we're following the law into this budget document, that's how we come up with this $2 million, that we believe this is what we're going to be liable to pay. That, to be fair, this is the pot we have to come up with to spread out among all of our employees, union and non-union. Okay. Thank you.
Just Commissioner Kraft.
Yes, and for the people in the listening audience that think we might be overpaying our people, we definitely are not overpaying most of our people. I won't say totally because I cannot testify totally, but Our psychiatrists get paid, after 5 years, $160,000 a year. The community at large is paying $200,000 plus on a new hire. Okay? Why would somebody want to work for Douglas County as a psychiatrist? That's why I said good luck to John Sheehan when he said he was looking to hire 2 psychiatrists. We do not overpay. The attorneys, I doubt if you can hire an attorney at $33 an hour, part-time or full-time. I know my attorney charges me quite a bit. I won't go into the amount, but that's a bargain. But we have something other people don't have, and that's job stability. The other thing, you'll notice that on this expense comparison, the County Board of Administration is up 38.64%. But when you only have 11 employees, the difference between one employee makes a huge difference. One employee is 10%, and our county office has been operating for a very long time, so understaffed that if our risk assessor leaves, we're in trouble. If our, what does Jan do? Her
workers' comp.
Workers' comp person leaves, we're in trouble. We hired a labor negotiator because we have 17 unions, and our labor negotiator has since stepped up, that was Patrick, to the county administrator. He was so overworked, he didn't have time to relax. He didn't have time to take care of all 17 unions negotiating contracts, and that's not an easy thing. People might poo-poo it and say, oh, 17, that's not very many. Well, how many does the city of Omaha have? Does anybody know?
3, I think.
3? 3 unions? State of Nebraska, I don't think, has 17 unions. So we got into the union business, so to speak, because we were underpaying everybody so much. Because we were so dramatically tight with our money that the only way the employees felt they could respond to a very tight county board was to form a union and then appeal to the CIR. And the CIR, in essence, makes decisions for us that are based upon community-wide, meaning comparables, outside of Omaha for people who do what they consider a comparable job. Okay? And we have to live by their rulings. Now, there are very few counties the size of Douglas County that have only 11 employees in their office. Many counties have an additional administrator for each commissioner. We get somewhere a little under $35,000 a year. That's not bad, I wouldn't do this for a private company for $35,000 a year. But there are counties that are much smaller than ours that pay twice as much to their commissioners. I'm not asking for a raise. I'm very happy with the $35,000 a year. I would do this for less. Okay? I like serving the public. Now, I'm going to have Joe on our increase that looks so dramatic. People say, 38% increase, and they gasp for air. But you can only operate so long understaffed. Joe, would you like to address the rest of that?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Kraft. These memos came out, and Mr. Kavanaugh's numbers are correct, but I think that it's, anytime you look at numbers in my 30 years of experience, that it's worthwhile to do an analysis behind the numbers. And so that's what I did yesterday, and I sent out to the commissioners, and I just would like to take the audience through that. The budget from fiscal 2009 to fiscal 2014 went from $716,216 with 10 employees to this year's proposed budget of $990,000 with 14 people, which was an increase of $274,000 and 4 people over the past 5 years. The key drivers of this increase are, first, the move of the internal audit function from the clerk's office to the administrative office. The job that was done by 3 people in the clerk's office is now done solely by Mike Dornicky, our chief internal auditor. The additional headcount was one person. The additional cost to the administration budget was $94,000. Replacing 3 people with 1, I'm sure, has resulted in a net savings to the county. Second, the creation of the Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative, or JDI, the program in the county within the administrative office. Additional headcount 1, Crystal Rhodes. Additional cost to the administration budget in F14, $58,000, the majority of which is offset by grant funding from the Nebraska Crime Commission and the Casey Foundation. So it works well. The budget is up. There is an offsetting revenue amount due to the grant. Third, the addition of 1 part-time position to assist the finance director when Sherry Albin, our lead accountant, went part-time after she had a child. So we now have 2 part-time accountants who both work 24 hours a week, which equates to 1.2 full-time employees to support the finance function of a $325 million, 2,000-employee operation. Additional headcount, 1 part-time person. Additional cost to the administrative budget, $12,000. 4. The creation of a labor negotiator position to handle the negotiations of the 17 labor agreements that the county is party to, remembering that labor and benefit costs make up 65% of the county's expenses. Additional headcount 1, additional cost to the administrative budget, $66,000. So the incremental cost of these 4 positions is $230,000 of the $274,000 increase, which means the other costs have increased $44,000 over the past 5 years, which equates to a 1.5% annual increase, which is significantly below the Consumer Price Index for this 5-year period. Thank you.
Joe.
On this question. Yeah, Commissioner Boyle.
Well, what I wanted to say is that after all this is over, what I do want to do is make sure that in the future that and even now that Commissioner Kavanaugh, or excuse me, County Clerk Kavanaugh's points are well taken. I take them seriously, and I know all of us do, that they will be incorporated, as we've discussed, in this budget document, and also that we'll work to do so in the future. I think it's a valid point, and I want to see that that's done. I want to make that real clear. Thanks, Tom.
Commissioner Morgan.
Joe, what the increase it shows on Mr. Kavanaugh's, I think, was 38%. What would be the increase when you do your number with these 4 items, you know, the auditor, et cetera, in there? What would have been an
6%
increase over the 5 years?
6%.
6%. Okay. Thank you.
Laura?
Yeah, I just had a question. Sorry. Laura McCormick, 336 Beverly. I think it's important. I understand what you're saying, Mr. Lorenz, about Crystal Rhodes and JDAI, but with all due respect, sir, that's another example of a program that starts out grant funded, and unfortunately, when the grants dry up, we, the people, are expected to pony up the cash. And once programming is established, we are told it is essential, it cannot be eliminated, and we cannot lay off, or should I say we don't have the stomach to do the layoffs. What is it Ronald Reagan said, the 9 most dangerous words in the English language? I'm from the government and I'm here to help. I don't think that applies, though, in Douglas County. I would tell you, as a citizen that attended numerous meetings, this information was not discussed. And I came and spoke with you personally, Madam Chair, about the county court budget, which I understand the county court courts are run by the state of Nebraska, but we also fund a portion of their budgets, and that was never discussed. How many other departments are like that? What is the ranking? One of my questions was going to be the number of unions. It makes sense to you all that it takes 17 unions in this. That makes sense.
No.
I'm a little confused. I'm not sure I understand. Does GM have 17 unions? Seriously, like, do we have a union for stapling and a union for punching? I'm not understanding. I guess one of the things that I would like to see is a ranking of the unions and the negotiated terms and costs. Where is that document so that a taxpayer can see that? And next year, when taxpayers attend the subcommittee meetings, it would be really nice if these documents were provided. How many other departments work like that? How many other cost items work like this that were not discussed? That's my question.
I just have to comment on the openness of our budgeting process. I mean, I've been here 2 years shy of what Commissioner Duda has, and I think he would agree with me that our process of going through and making a budget is extremely different than what it was when we first started out. Does that mean that we don't have to or look for ways to even make it more transparent or more better for the public? No. But I feel very, very good with opening up our budgeting process. And every single person, every elected official, every employee of Douglas County can listen in on these budget committees, can sit in. They're recorded. There's an employee from the clerk's office that takes notes. They're transcribed. They're sent. You know, there's some things that citizens will ask for that maybe we haven't thought of giving more detail to, because it becomes kind of second nature to us. And so, Laura, I appreciate you wanting additional information, and I work real hard to get that. Doug and Marty, you too. I don't think we've ever turned down a citizen for more information on our budgeting numbers. And so, while I'm always looking for ways to improve and always looking for ways to be more efficient, I can sit here and say that we have opened up our budgeting process, that every single meeting we have on our budget is open to the public. And I will take that to the mat with anybody who wants to argue me about that. Marty?
Marty Brown, 14818 Berry Circle, VP of Project for Nebraska Taxpayers for Freedom. 3 years ago, Marianne and I sat down, and she wanted Omaha World Herald submitted a report of all salaries in Douglas County. I just submitted to about 28 people on our project right now. And it shows every salary in Douglas County, and from 2006 to 2010. And Joe has been quite helpful in giving me numbers to look. And as we all know, the unions, which I submitted to Marianne, I'd like to sit down with the board and discuss those options with the CIR and other things. But weekly, I get a pension to SAMI. You won't be surprised how many counties are going broke because they can't guarantee the pension funds as it is. And it's going to be a big problem with the CPI increases and so forth. But getting back to Joe's response to Tom's article, as an accountant like I was, it's hard to determine what the union is going to require in the future. I know 1% or 2% or what other benefits will go with it. So it's an estimate. It's an estimate. You know, we have to live with the estimate. I do it in my business, and I do it in my personal too. So I appreciate the commissioner's efforts. Okay, I appreciate that they're open. Joe, I appreciate it. Mike, I like some of the comments in reference to looking at things, but it all boils down to personnel and benefits. And if you read the World Herald last night or watched TV, you know, they're going to come after them. We, the people, are going to come after them. So I appreciate your time and your effort and your openness. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Commissioner Boyle?
Well, I'd like to throw in my 2 cents about this budget process, because it was not long ago that I was never in the loop. I was never really in the loop. And I remember people coming in my office, and I felt like I was getting patted on my head. I could almost feel it like this, and people sitting around the table. I don't have a desk in my office, and being told what the budget was going to be, and this was going to be the planned tax increase. And I knew that I was outvoted, that it was going to happen. And I didn't like what took place, because I was just not in the deal, that the deal had been cut, I felt. And it was just one of those things. And but things changed. Commissioner Duda and Commissioner Morgan changed it dramatically. And we went to this terrifically open system where we have these tediously long sessions. And they've turned into something that they don't seem quite so tedious anymore. People know what to do when they come. They're expressive. We have good folks from the public that are welcome and show up. We have Laura, we have Marty, we have Doug, we have other people who come and contribute to the process, ask good, hard questions, and it helps. What it does is, you know, we have to be truthful, because it's too difficult. If we start to lie to you, you know, it's too hard to remember what we told you. So, you know, we have to be open and honest, and we have a terrific staff that really works hard, and we have the cooperation of other elected officials. So, I mean, it's a really good process, and it works. But we have a lot of room for improvement, and I appreciate the honest criticism and suggestions. So I, for one, really appreciate the openness that Commissioner Morgan and Commissioner Duda have brought to this under the leadership of our chair. It makes me feel a real part of this system, and even though I'm not always on the prevailing side, I get my 2 cents in, and I leave here after every vote feeling like I've done what I'm supposed to do, and that's what it's all about.
Thank you, Commissioner Bowe.
Thank you.
Commissioner Duda?
Thank you. I have to add, too, that it is a much better process now than it was years ago. And one other change that hasn't been mentioned yet is we're doing all this in June.
Yeah.
You know, if you remember, on September 11th, the infamous September 11th, we were passing a county budget while the attack was going on. I think we raised taxes that day and nobody noticed. But the point is, that was in September. Now we're doing this in June. You know, when we try to take, in some cases, more drastic action on a budget, it's only fair to do it at the beginning of the year, not wait until even though the law says we can wait until September to pass it, and most counties do. I think it is much more professional and businesslike to try to get it done in June at the beginning of the fiscal year rather than part way into it. I, too, am sorry that we have 17 unions, but the only way you can blame the county board for that is the fact that we were so tight and we went for a couple of years without giving any raises to employees because we had frozen in the days of highly escalating property valuations. We went for 2 years with freezing the number of dollars that we took in, so that the more the tax rate went up, the more we dropped our rate. Well, that worked great for those 2 years, but we ended up with 1,000 more union employees than we had going into it. And so that was an expensive lesson for us. And we did learn you can only be so tight, and we only have so much control, and then other things kick in that are beyond our control. But while we may have disagreements on what is the appropriate funding level, I do not have any disagreements with the process that we use now. I think it is vastly improved. And where we have a difference of opinions on a funding level, let the world know what you think, what I think. They know, and live with the results.
Just because you're wrong.
Boy, I wish the sun would come out of the Sunshine District again. But anyhow, I too just have to throw in that it is a much improved process that we use today.
Thank you, Commissioner Duke. Commissioner Tusha?
I also want to thank both Claire and PJ for opening this up. I've only been on the board for a few short years of 7 years, and so I'm not real familiar with what's been done in the past, but I do remember the last couple of years before the openness, it was behind closed doors. And it was like maybe one commissioner or two commissioners, talking about this, but it seemed very private and closed, and it was not very open. And so I know we have long 7-hour, 8-hour meetings, but, to me, if that's what it takes for us to understand as a whole board and bring the public in to help them understand the budget process, I totally appreciate the changes that we've gone through, and I hope we continue to do it this way.
Thank you. Commissioner Morgan?
Well, I want to also mention Commissioner Kraft, because you and I were on the Finance Committee when I started on the county board, and you were part of this open policy as we started. I also want to thank the commissioners for all of them participating in the 7-8-hour sessions that we've had. And Doug, Marty, you've sat through it, the League of Women Voters have. If you have suggestions to us early, next month, whatever, of how to change that, I'm positive we're probably the most open subdivision around state, schools, whatever, in our budget process. And even though you may say, hey, I disagree with what you've done, you're right there hearing the department heads, our directors talk about it and can state whatever you want, and it's not just you're there but you can't talk. And I think it's a great policy, and I hope others follow it, and we'll work to get better as we go along if we're here. So thank you for your participation too.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Boyle, for bringing the
Thank you.
discussion. We'll move, the Health and Human Services had one item, but that's been pulled until the 16th, I believe, July 16th. Next is the Human Resources, the weekly personnel report from Civil Service as presented. If anyone has any questions or comments on that. Next is the weekly CAO report on staff assaults. Diane, I believe.
Yes, thank you. Diane Carlson, Deputy County Administrator. I just have one incident to report that occurred at the Community Mental Health Center. One of the patients there became combative, and this resulted in the patient biting one of the county security guards. It did not break through any skin or anything, but there was that incident, and no other community mental health workers were injured.
Thank you. Any questions on that? Commissioner Morgan? No. Okay. Next is the legislative issues. Commissioner Morgan?
No.
Oh, okay. Again, we'll keep watch. I'll send out the interim study when we get that from Sean, and I know even some of the individuals who have worked with us during our budget are interested in meeting about those as well, so we'll be getting that set up. So, anything else? Commissioner Morgan?
I was going to just mention one item, Madam Chairperson. Patrick Bloomingdale lost his brother, and I thought he is not at our meeting, but maybe we should have a moment of silence about that loss of his young brother.
Yes.
A Marine veteran, he was.
Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Morgan. Was there executive session?
No, no need.
Yay! Is there a motion to adjourn?
You bet.
I don't know if we'll know what to do.
What do we do the rest
Oh.
of the day?
Yeah, we don't have a meeting till 1:30 now?
Yeah, we do have the Human Resources Committee meeting at 903 at 1:30. There'll be the United Healthcare Annual Consultation, Minnesota Life Insurance renewal of premium rates and plan enhancement considerations, and then highlights of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. Please take note that we will be closed July 4th in observance of the 4th of July. The County Board of Commissioners will not meet July 2nd. We will have a public hearing and possible action on our budget on July 9th at 9 o'clock here in the chamber. Cool. Thank you. Okay.
And that's a special meeting on the 9th.
And that's a special meeting on the 9th.
Just
because we were
for-
scheduled just for the
Just for the budget, thank you.
Okay. Is there did everybody vote? Was there a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Please vote.
I know, a vote to adjourn won't take.
I know.
Thanks.
What are we to do?
What do you say?